Super Doc Stories. I am your host, Dr. Mona Sodhi, and today I have the pleasure of hosting Dr. Anu Sidhu. Dr. Sidhu is a board certified family and lifestyle medicine physician and the founder of Spring Monarch Primary Care, a direct care practice that's in Houston, Texas. After nearly 20 years in traditional medicine, Dr. Sidhu left corporate healthcare to build her practice, which is rooted in what she calls the conversation your doctor didn't have time to finish. Her work centers on root cause medicine, connecting the dots between gut health, hormonal imbalances, insulin resistance, and food sensitivities that a standard 8-minute visit would routinely miss. She's the creator of the growing platform anu.sidhu.md, and we'll copy that in the show notes, where she educates women on the root causes of bloating, fatigue, hormonal imbalances, and food sensitivities. Dr. Sidhu is passionate about empowering patients to advocate for themselves and find answers that the traditional healthcare system too often overlooks. Welcome, Dr. Sidhu, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Mona.
Yeah, this is an amazing bio to read, and I'm just in awe of all the docs that you're able to connect with your patients. I really would love to kind of go back in your history and talk a little bit about your journey into medicine and what you went into medicine for and what you thought it was going to look like. And then, really, for our listeners, transition into what made you leave that traditional structure to go out on your own. So, in your own words, kind of what was life like when you were still thinking about, I want to be a physician and go to residency and help patients? And then what changed that really made you pivot to becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, as I look back on my story, I realized that I don't really do things conventionally, but it never starts out that way. But I basically decided in high school that I wanted to do medicine, and I went overseas. At that time, we had a lot of friends and family that were going overseas to this European medical school. And so after I graduated high school, I went overseas to Hungary and I started medical school there.
Wow.
And I spent 4 years there, and then I transferred to a Caribbean school so I could do my rotations in the States. But
Okay.
when I started med school, I was sure I was going to be a psychiatrist. I went to medical school so I could be a psychiatrist. That was it. That was my whole plan. But then as like medical school was going on, I realized that I really like could not do that all day. I am an empath like through and through. And I realized I would need some kind of breaks throughout my day if I was going to do this for, 40 years or so.
Mhm.
So as I was choosing residency last minute, I chose family medicine. Best switch, best like last minute decision ever, because it was, other than being the mother of my children, being a family doctor is what I was born to do. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, so
I
so
love
much
that.
for, yeah.
And with family medicine, I mean, you do get your share of psychiatry kind of things that, it's all psychological as well, like everything that is so important.
Hmm.
I think now in 2026, we're really embracing that psychosocial aspect of medicine as well. So I'm internal medicine by training, but what I love about both family and internal medicine is that we have the ability to cross over into a little bit of psychiatry, a little bit of women's health, a little bit of obesity medicine in my case. So they're quite flexible types of residencies. So tell me, you went into family practice residency, and then did you go straight into employment through a hospital system or private practice? What's your journey been like?
When I graduated residency, I was supposed to actually go back and teach at my residency, and they were holding the job for me for about a year. But I was 5 months pregnant when I graduated, so I was going to have the baby, take my boards, and then circle back around and come work for them. And when my baby was about 6 months old, I started doing some locums while I waited to start the teaching program. And it was an hour away, and my residency was an hour away. And on the third day of the locums, my baby's at home. She isn't quite 6 months, and I am stuck in parking lot traffic. I can't go anywhere, and there's no more milk at home, none. And
No.
she never liked formula. She didn't drink formula. She didn't eat food yet. So there's literally nothing my husband can do. And it was such a desperate feeling, like as a mom. And I realized I can't do this. I can't drive the other direction for the rest of my life while I'm raising babies and so far away, an hour away. And
Yeah.
so I came home and again, like last minute, I picked up the phone and I called my program director and I said, I'm so sorry. I know you've been holding this job for me, but I can't come back. I didn't know what it was going to be like to be a mom. And now that I know, I can't do this commute. And he's like, well, we've been holding this for you for so long. And I was like, yes, but if I came back, I wouldn't be the resident that you hired. I'm just not the same person and I can't dedicate the same hours. And he said, well, if I said, well, if I could start part time, that could be. And he said, well, part time isn't a way to start a career. And I said, then I'm done. I can't. I'm so sorry. And he,
Oh, wow.
of course he's flabbergasted because like he's like, you have another job pending, don't you? And I was like, I have nothing. Once we hang up, my loans start repayment. I have
Right.
no job, but I
Right.
know I'm not coming there. And so I hung up, and then the job I ended up getting and kept for 15 years ended up falling into my lap 2 weeks later, 10 minutes down the road from my house. So yeah, that's how that went.
Oh, wow. I mean, that is, first of all, that's really brave. I mean, the things we will do when we're new mothers. It's amazing that you had the courage to do that and to walk away from something that was reserved for you, knowing that it just wasn't in alignment with what you needed at that phase of your life. And then you said the next position just kind of came up and you were there for 15 years. So
hmm
talk about serendipity there. So tell me, was that also an employed position that you were in?
Yeah, so it was actually the same hospital system that I did my residency, but a different entity, a different location. And so at that time, this was 2010. At that time, hospitals were just starting to employ physicians. The physician organizations were just starting out. And this hospital system had one office in the med center and then one office in the satellite. But they were like, basically, we are going to build this massive entity where we hire physicians. And
Mhm.
so they were just starting out. So my partner was physician one in the community, and I was physician two. And now they have over 230 primary care and over 1,000 specialists. So we were sort of doctor one and two that they hired. And so I happened to be sort of in the right place at the right time. The partner that they chose first, she met me for like, I didn't even realize it was an interview. She met me for like 2 minutes in between her doing procedures and was like, yeah, we can go with her. And
Oh my gosh.
at first I was like, gosh, she's really easy. And now, as I worked with her, I was like, she is not easy. Like, I don't know why she picked me, but she did. And so we hired a third. And so we stuck together, the three of us, for almost 15 years.
Wow.
And because we were such a strong force, we stayed really insulated from all the changes in healthcare.
Yeah.
But there was only so much time you can stay insulated from this massive multi-billion-dollar industry. And so leaving them was one of the hardest decisions that I have ever had to make. And it was hard, it shattered my heart, right? But
Yeah.
you can't stay because, I was changing as a person. I felt like I was becoming toxic. I felt like, and when I finally told them the morning I decided, and they said, we just want you to be happy again. We just want you to be yourself again. And you're not. So if
Wow.
that's what you have to
They
do,
saw
is
it
you
too.
just go.
They recognized that you had something had shifted in you, and
hmm
or that's so. It sounds like you left on mutual terms that were okay, and you've moved on since then to start your practice.
Yeah, I left on really good terms, actually. I left on good terms with the hospital, the CEOs, my
Right.
partners, my
Yep.
patient. Like, I left on really good terms because I think everyone recognized that they could no longer provide for me what I needed from there anymore. And it just wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I had sort of outgrown that. And I had given them 15 years, right, of good years. And when I left, I had the conversations in the order that I needed to have them. So I let the people know in order in a respectful way and say, hey, look, it no longer aligns with
Yeah.
the mom I want to be, the doctor I want to be. And you guys can't, I have tried. I've stayed in the system so I could change the system, but it's changing me. And there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do about that. And
Right.
so I need to
I think
go. And
that's
so,
a conversation that isn't had enough, which is that you can part on good terms. And we always hear about the nasty stories and the legal battles and, all of these things that come to surface when a physician does decide to leave. But you're a great example that, you can still leave, at your peak or when you feel like things aren't working, and you can be transparent and say, this job is no longer filling, my cup in the way that it used to. And I've changed, and that's why I'm leaving. And so it is kind of refreshing to hear that you were able to have an honest conversation and leave. And yeah. So tell me, from the time that you left, had you already most doctors have already more or less plotted their escape. But had you really given a lot of thought to, let's say, marketing for your new practice and the DPC, where it was going to be? Or did you just quit and you're like, I'll figure it out from here and, hang my shingle?
So I was actually up for contract renewal at the end of the year, and the changes that were happening in the system were just so heartbreaking to me. It was we were moving towards panel size incentivization instead of quality. And I was
Yeah.
never going to make the panel size bonuses. I always made the quality bonuses. And then there was a huge effort for sort of joy in medicine, burnout fixes. And I had been sidelined from that conversation because they felt like I was too anti-system, which was like mortifying to me because I had never been to the principal's office. I had never been red flagged for anything. And now I was anti system. Looking
Oh,
back, I realized that we were both right. I was anti system, like healthcare system, right? For physicians and patients. Something is wrong. But
right.
because they were in my first line of fire, it was taken personal, like I was anti hospital. And
Mhm.
understanding that you're not anti hospital just because you're anti system, I think was not a conversation that we had at that time. And then the incentivization changed. And so I knew I had contract renewal coming up, but I was just like, I was distraught. I had planned on retiring with this company. I was very emotionally connected to my work family. And
Mhm.
so I actually went to Pinnacle in May of 2024 within 2 months of the heartbreak. And I was just really lost when I showed up at Pinnacle.
Right.
And I'd chaperoned my daughter's like eighth grade trip to DC the week prior and like walked 20,000 steps. So when I showed up to Pinnacle, I was emotionally drained, physically drained, mentally drained, everything. And I really didn't pay attention as much as I usually do to the women on the stage because I think I was just zoned out. And I was out driving home and I was like, that was just a huge waste. Like I got nothing out of it, but I'm sure the answer was on stage. But because I wasn't focused, I lost the opportunity. And I was like, come on, think about it. Think about it. Like, what did someone say that can get you out of this mess that you're in? And then I remembered someone had said, don't negotiate out of fear. And I was like, and I was driving from Austin to Houston. I was like, that's it. I have contract renewal coming up. I have the summer before contract renewal. I'm not going to negotiate out of fear. And what
Yeah.
that's going to look like for me is exploring my options. So I dedicated the summer to do two things. At work, I just put my head down and did it the way they wanted me to, because there was this whole notion like, Dr. Sidhu, if you would just do it our way, you would be happy like everybody else. And
Yeah.
then the second thing was like at home, I started exploring my options. By the end of the summer, I was absolutely miserable at work more than I could have ever imagined. And at home, I'd found direct care and fallen in love. Um, but I
Yeah.
wanted to stay still because of the emotional connection. But I think like when you are headed towards a breakup, it just takes one more thing to break. And
Right.
so November 7th, I turned in my resignation, decided not to renew. And I stayed for 5 months after that to finish
Right.
out my panel. And so yeah. So I wish I had planned my DPC more in those 5 months, but I think I didn't have it. I didn't have the
Yeah.
bandwidth to do it. I wish I had, but it took me another 4 months to start the DPC after I left because
Yeah.
I didn't plan it during.
Yeah.
I knew where I was going. I knew what I was going to do,
Yeah,
but
that's
I
something
couldn't do
that I
it.
hear pretty regularly, which is I wish I had started my social media. I wish I had started my email list, started marketing way before. And so when we work with our clients at SuperDoc Tech, we talk about that as like the runway up until you take off with your practice. And the longer that runway is, the better, because really what you're doing is building a brand. And it can be done after, but it just helps that for those that are able to put in a little bit of effort beforehand, they oftentimes have this interest that they've generated for their practice. And so they open with several patients ready to see them. And it, like I said, the way you did it, it can be done the other way. It's just everyone always says, I wish I had, marketed a little bit or put my face out there a little bit. And I know that there are like non-competes and there's different things you can and cannot do when you're employed. So you have to work with that. But would you say that is a piece of advice you'd give to the doctor that's thinking about leaving, is potentially starting a new brand on the side, under your own name, not under the hospital's name?
So, as someone said something to me really important that said, you end up leaving about a year after you realize it's time to leave. That transition, typically, somehow, for some reason, the universe, it takes a year. So, if anyone is listening to this or watching this and you've already had the thought that maybe I need to leave, there's a good chance you're going to be gone in a year, okay,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, however the universe. So that this is like the prime time to start thinking about your finances, right? What
Mhm.
can you cut? What kind of jobs? The one big regret I did have was that I didn't secure like some part-time additional income while I was still employed. I thought that would come a lot easier than it did, and it didn't end up ever coming. And so I thought that I would have a supplemental income while I started, and I was really laxed on that because I thought it would be so much easier. So if you're listening to this, you've probably already thought about leaving, and now's the time to start planning that financial aspect. The second thing is that I was allowed to tell patients where I was going if they asked. So I had a social media page dedicated to my new practice, and
Yep.
I had a Google phone number that I
Yep.
could give them if they asked. So when I started my practice, 20 patients started right off the bat, and they paid my first month's rent.
That's
So
amazing.
it was very, very effective the way I did it. I have some regrets, but I really like I'm past the point of like judging myself of doing things differently. I think it all worked out. But that is the one thing I would have it I had a specific thought in October of 2023 that I think was like the first thought time I ever thought about leaving, like in a very like abstract way. And
Mhm.
that is the time to start planning your finances.
Yeah, I love that. And when you plan your finances, they really come to life. I know a lot of physicians avoid that. It's the kind of like it's like the junk drawer. Nobody wants to look at it. It can be messy. But when you're looking to start your own practice, you're starting from scratch. And so you've got to face that reality. And so maybe you do need to have a 1099 job for a little bit just to bridge it. I do know
Hmm.
several people like yourself that ended up just going 100% all into their practice. And everyone's financial situation is different and what they're able to do. It definitely puts the pressure on, right? When you're just like, I'm just going to
Hmm.
quit and start this other thing. But you bring up a really good point. Thank you for bringing up the finances. We don't talk about that nearly enough, and it's scary, right? To leave your comfortable W-2 job with your retirement and the benefits that you get, the security, the patience they provide, all the way to being an entrepreneur where none of that's guaranteed. And if you're willing to do it, I believe that you can do it. No, you can do anything. And oftentimes I coach physicians like, you've done way harder things than this. This is just taking that leap
Hmm.
of faith that you've got this and you can do hard things and it will be okay. So tell me, you made the leap, and I'm so glad to hear that you had patients that loved your care and followed you. Like that's what an amazing feeling and nod to the how wonderful of a physician you are. Tell me, like, when you first opened, what were like if you, when you think back to that time, what were some of the challenges that you faced that maybe you didn't see coming?
Well, there's this saying for direct care is like if you're not at least a little bit embarrassed about your opening, you've waited too long, which
Okay,
means that because you can't know all the obstacles, bottlenecks, and problems you're going to experience unless you're open. There, I mean, you can plan top down, inside out, but we're talking about real human life here, right? We're
mhm,
talking about real people. And if you've seen one direct care practice, you've seen one direct care practice. And
exactly.
what works in Arizona may not work in Houston.
Right.
So there have been lots of companies who have figured out, say, one city, gone to another city, and gone bankrupt
Mhm.
because it's so individualized. And so, there was a lot of things. Like I was stupid about money while I was employed. Like I barely knew where a bank was. I'm just really lucky that I have a husband who didn't like
Who pays
he was
attention?
okay with me. Yeah, yeah. So I had to learn like I had to go open my own bank account because he couldn't
Mhm.
show up.
Right.
And I was like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
I don't have a multi-million dollar IT company behind me anymore, so it might take me 7 hours to figure out an IT issue, but I'm going to figure it out.
Yep.
And I started using like people in my orbit for their expertise, whereas I've been an independent person my whole life, right? So, but I
Mhm.
learned to like ask for help. So all these people that I had just kind of gotten to know over the years sort of
Mhm.
became really, really part of me building, because I realized I can't do it all, but I needed to do as
Sure.
much as possible, right? You don't want to spend a lot of money, but you want to do it. But there's quality does start to suffer if you really truly do it all.
Yep.
So I think, you just have to start, right? You just
Yeah.
have to start and you will figure it out. Because a friend told me, she said, because this is in my sort of thinking stages. I was like, well, I'm not a business person. And she
Yeah.
said, well, actually, physicians were the first entrepreneurs in the history of time, and we were wildly successful until we decided to get employed.
Right.
Finances have never been a problem for physicians until they decide to get employed. We
Right.
ran our own businesses. And I
Right.
was like, yeah, that's kind of true, right? If you look back, we
Mhm.
never saw any doctors growing up that struggled financially. They did just fine and they ran their businesses. So, like, why can't I do it? Right.
Exactly.
And so,
Yep.
so
It's
that
like
was, yeah.
when medicine became corporate is really when that took
Mm-hmm.
a plunge, and we
Mm-hmm.
talk about it as the golden era of medicine. Like our
Mm-hmm.
grandparents' generation that, and maybe our parents' generation, where there were physicians that did really well, and then many of us walked into this corporate medicine state and we're like, this is not what we observed.
Mm-hmm.
This life is totally different. But I love that right now we're in the new golden era of medicine where
Mm-hmm.
doctors are realizing our power.
Taking it back.
Yeah, and that we are entrepreneurs. We're selling all the time. Like we're telling
Mm-hmm.
patients what they need, and with confidence. And that's all selling is. And so once you recognize that we are born to sell, we're born to be entrepreneurs, and you tap into it, the sky is the limit. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
really loving that. Um, and I love what you said about how you just need to start. That's people don't take that very seriously, and I think they need to. It literally is. There's no better experience. There's no business school. There's no degree that's going to tell you what to do better than starting a
You have
business.
to start. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I had the person who designed my website. So she's also a patient. She's also a friend, like all the things.
Yeah.
And she's a perfectionist. She's OCD perfectionist. And I know that she makes things beautiful. Like she has a marketing background. And my lease
Yep.
started July 15th. And I was like, I need a functioning website by July 15th. It doesn't have to be beautiful, but it has to be functioning. And she would come to me and she's like, but I can do better. I was like, make it now and make it good later. It
Right.
needs to be up and
Oh, I love
running by July 15th. We're
that.
going to make it and then we're going to make it good later. And I had to like repeat that to her over and over because I had already repeated it to
Right.
myself for the last few months. And so, like, you make it good later. If you're not a
Yep.
little bit embarrassed about your start, you've waited too long. Like, just jump in because you already know how to practice medicine. You can
Mhm.
hire people around you to help you with everything else. Seeing the
Yep.
patients isn't the hard part. And so,
Yep.
once you sit in the exam room with the patients and you're delivering better care and a better experience than the people down the road, you are going to grow. You are.
Yes. Yep.
People are desperate for that.
Word of mouth definitely is your friend in that case. And so at SuperDoc Tech, one of the things we're able to do with our CRM is build out websites. But it's funny, I'm here to say you actually don't need a website to start a business. And a
No.
lot of physicians are convinced that if they don't have a website with who they are, their accolades on there, their degrees,
Mm-hmm.
about me, like that they can't start. And I think it's a lie we tell ourselves, and it holds us back because like what you're saying, define done. Like when is the website
Mm-hmm.
ever really done? So we encourage our clients to say, maybe we need just a landing page, just so
Mm-hmm.
someone has like the bare bones basics of who you are, what you're selling, and that's it. And then they can book a discovery call with you. And so sometimes
That could
the
have been, yeah, that can be social media page, a free Instagram page. It can be your landing page with the link for a link tree. Like it's
yeah,
just take out whatever the thing that you think is the hardest, remove that and look and see what's left. It's so much
yeah.
easier if you remove that one. What's the one thing you wish you didn't know?
Yeah.
And now, what if that wasn't a problem? Put it aside and just keep moving forward because nothing is important. Website isn't important.
Yeah, I hear
Instagram
it all
isn't
the
important.
time. People pay thousands of dollars just for a beautiful website, and I always tell them, like, unless you're a plastic surgeon and aesthetics is your thing, like, you don't need the most beautiful website in the world. And in fact, I know some plastic surgeons that have, quite honestly, not so great websites, but their work
Mm-hmm.
is beautiful. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not about the website, but I think that that's the tangible thing that physicians know and see, and they hyper focus on that when really, I would say, and I want your answer to this as well, the most important thing is to actually get out there and become known as the local expert. So, be at all the events, be present, be visible in all areas, in your community. If you're doing a DPC, figure out where your ideal clients are. So for you, it's, a lot of women that are in the perimenopausal phase of life. Where do they hang out? Is it their local health club? Is it Pilates? Is it their schools? Like, go and find them and speak to them there rather than hyper fixating at 2 a.m. on your website. There's so many physicians that are doing that rather than
Mm-hmm.
doing what is actually the harder thing, which is, putting yourself out there, going from dormant to an active butterfly that is like, hey, I'm here. This is who I help, and this is how I do it. What are your thoughts on kind of where physicians starting out should be spending their time?
So I think the important thing is get to your no fast. Get to the no fast, right? You're going to have to try different things. So like I really thought that like my neighborhood, it's a very large neighborhood that I would get lots of patients from this neighborhood if I just showed up on the
Yeah.
free Facebook page. And I
Mhm.
was getting a lot of questions and I was like, and this was around the time that it was possible that the ACA was going to completely go away or it was going to, the for affordable
Yep.
accountability, right? The healthcare. And
Yep.
so it was going to go away. And so I was like, I'll just host a free event for you guys to just come out because people were, message me. I'll host a free event for you guys to come just ask me questions
Right.
about your insurance,
Right.
about the ACA, about direct care,
Right.
and we can all ask these questions at this time. So I went to a coffee shop, I posted it, zero people showed up. Zero. I sat there for an hour by myself and it's demoralizing. But I was like, okay, this is my no.
Yeah.
My neighborhood is not going to build my practice. I
Yeah.
have gotten patients from my neighborhood, but it wasn't the avenue that I thought it would be. So then, like, where else do you look, right? And so you just have to get to your no fast. You're not going to know what your no is if you're sitting behind a computer building your website till 2 a.m., like you said, right? And so you have to get out there. There's some things that I've done that have been really helpful, some things that haven't, but just putting myself into these uncomfortable situations, I've
Yep.
learned so much more than I could have done planning, a year ago.
Yeah, I love that, getting to know, and thank you for normalizing. Like, sometimes we think that we're
Mm-hmm.
going to a place where our people will be or show up, and they're not there, but it's not a reflection on you. It's just trying new things in how to get patients. And it's like a lab. You've just got to test different things out. And
Mm-hmm.
it's totally fine to have something where you don't get any clients. If anything, you've practiced. I was just coaching one of our clients. She was going to her first health expo and she didn't have a plan. So I said, well, you need to go in there with a plan and an outcome. Like, what is the desired outcome here? And it was as simple as, we're going to have a clipboard so that even if the tech breaks, you still get some names and emails. You're going to have an offer and you're going to have an I help statement. And she had a pretty successful event because before that, she didn't really have a plan. She's like, I'm just going to stand there. And I said, well, what are you going to do? Like, so the
Mm-hmm.
more prepared you can be, the better. Even if nobody shows up, you're learning something from that. You've done the preparation. You've
Mm-hmm.
gotten your materials. It's like a rehearsal, right? You've done the work. And so the next time something comes up, you're that much more prepared. So it's all in the practice. So you're just getting miles like that. It sounds like that's what you were doing with that. Um, well, this has been wonderful, Dr. Anu. Thank you so much for joining us and giving our listeners so many pearls, for them to take home with them and really consider when they're embarking on their journeys. Um, you said you have a Instagram following. If you want to share that with us, that would be great. And any final kind of tips or advice that you want to leave our listeners with?
So my Instagram is anu.sidhu.md. That's where I hang out the most, I guess, social media wise. I educate women about their health on there, but I also talk about my journey. Like, so I share tidbits about my journey and how I got to where I am. The good thing is most of my followers have been with me since before I quit. So they regularly comment on just how different I look and how more confident I sound and happier and relaxed I sound from when I was employed to now, which is really, really reassuring when strangers see that. So it's
Yeah,
been fun to have that. It's been interesting to live that journey out live, for the world to see, but I think that it helps other people. And so I would do it
yeah,
over and over
definitely.
again.
Yeah.
But I guess the takeaway is if you're listening to this and you've already started to think like I need to exit because you no longer feel aligned, understand that people are going to tell you it's burnout, but it's probably moral injury. And if you're experiencing moral injury, all the pizza parties, the vacations, and the yoga are not going to solve your moral injury. Unfortunately, only quitting is going to solve your moral injury. Getting out of the system that is causing moral injury is the only fix to moral injury. And so you can do the yoga, you can do the pizza parties, you can do the vacations, but
Mhm.
that deep set moral injury is going to be sitting there. And there's like my friend who's also a physician who also left the system. I saw her 2 days ago, and she's like, "You're right. There is life after being employed. You said it, and now I see it." And like, what an amazing feeling that is, right? Because I'm
Yeah,
seeing it happen across so many people,
right.
and like no one can do our job. Every administrator in the system, nobody can do our job. And we do it and we do it well. And I want to do it for another 20 or 30 years. And
Yeah,
so it was, you know, it would have been real shame if I let someone take that from me.
yeah. Thank you so much. We definitely needed to hear that and the difference between burnout and moral injury. It's such a good reminder that we can't just put band-aids on it. We've got to take control, and that's the way out. So thank you so much for all of this advice, and we will share your information in the show notes. Thank you so much, Dr. Anu. It's been my pleasure hosting you.
Thank you so much for having me.